Good morning, adventurers. My name is Ben, and welcome to a morning show where I sit around, drink some tea, and talk about D&D. First up for D&D today, we have the I Can Fix It mug with the backwards tape measure on it, because why not? And inside of it, we have some of the throat coat that I have because I really like the slippery elm bark. Really not for a different reason than that. I just happen to really like the way that tastes. So, moving past that, because that's not what we're here to talk about. Today, we are talking about my 3 biggest things for creating a party dynamic. Now, this is mostly tailored towards players, but DMs, you are going to be able to take some of these things and try and help facilitate the way that these things sort of work in your actual game. I am thinking about this currently because I have been so lucky to be able to play in an amazing game once every few weeks here, and we are now 12, going to be 13 sessions in, and we have a really fantastic dynamic built. We do some really cool stuff, and I noticed it really in the last session that we had, where everybody was just playing off each other so well. We did such a good job, and after the fact, everybody's like, man, that was such a good session. Like, that was so much fun. We barely did anything. We barely rolled the dice all that much. It was to find, like, stores, and it was mostly a shopping and travel episode, but it was so much fun. It was so good. And so I want to talk about building that dynamic, how we got there in 12 sessions, mind you. We were there earlier, but after the 12th session, we were like, oh my god, it's really just, it's hitting. So we're going to talk about the 3 things that I think are really important to contribute to that dynamic and the building of that dynamic. So first up, the implication for this is that the party is coming together for the first time. They don't necessarily know each other, because these are tips for, like, building a new dynamic. It can be that you've got people playing siblings or a couple or some sort of paired character in some capacity. And then if the other people at the table are new to the dynamic, those two will have their own thing that they're doing, as well as having the rest of the party involved. I will probably do a different episode at some point about establishing a dynamic before you arrive at the table, if that is the way that you're going to do it. But we're talking about new dynamics specifically today. So let's get into it. Number 1, I have be open when you meet. And when I say that, I mean be an engaging person at the table when you meet. If you're meeting these people for the first time, be engaging and open with the people that you're going to be playing with for sure. But what I mean specifically is, as a character, be open when you meet. So often, especially first-time, second-timers, want to play the, like, dark, brooding, quiet character in the corner. That's great, and that's fine, and that you'll have fun playing that character, I'm sure. But you have to be open in some capacity to actually engaging with the scene that is playing out in front of you, and not just content to sit off in the corner. You have to find a reason that your character wants to be involved in what is going on. If it's that you meet in a tavern and you are sitting off in the corner and a couple of other characters start talking, and then there's some kind of a fight or something like that, you have to find it somewhere in your character to become invested enough in what's going on to engage with what is happening, to try and then establish that relationship with the other people at the table. Additionally, what I mean by being open is that you as a player need to be open to sort of on the fly accepting different perspectives on who you are and what you're doing. Things change as soon as the rubber meets the road with D&D characters. There is nothing that you can do that will adequately prepare you 100% for what is going to happen, and you need to be okay with that going into it. There has to be a certain amount of flexibility when you initially invest in this character to allow the people around you to shape it. You really kind of have to come in about 2/3 formed and then be able to move from there. And if you do it really well, people will think that that is exactly how you were set up to begin with. If you take a show like Critical Role or something like that, and you just sort of watch it at the beginning of a campaign, you can see very faintly that there are things that adjust as things happen. A good example of that actually is Caleb being stinky. He was not supposed to be stinky. He was just dirty originally. But Laura Bailey said, hey, you're stinky now. And then he became stinky for the rest of the campaign. If you want something that is more in your face about it, NADPOD is a really, really phenomenal source of that, because the players around the table will just say stuff and then the other people will bounce off it. And that gets thrown around a lot because D&D is just improv with dice. They actually actively engage in that as the scene goes on, as the seasons go on. So listen to NADPOD to find that if you are looking for it. If you're looking very closely, you can see it in Critical Role. But it seems like they have shown up to the table with well-established, deeply detailed characters that can't be changed by anything that is meeting them. But that's not the case. It just, they're good at rolling with it and going with the flow, and it doesn't seem like anything is changing in that capacity. Number 2 kind of ties into my number 1 here, but be a team player. This is past the initial meeting. The initial meeting, you have to be open and able to like actually engage with everybody else. In the in the next few sessions, I don't really know what I was trying to get to with consequential there. In the next few sessions, you need to be open to being a team player. You need to be able to engage with being a team player. Maybe your character is in it for themselves and that is it. There's nothing else. That's fine. You can play your whole first mission that way, where they are out for themselves. They're just in it to make money, clear their name, whatever it is that they're doing. That's cool. But there has to be something in that mission that binds you to the group that you're in. There has to be something that happens, or some character that you're like, okay, we can latch on to you a little bit here. You have to recognize that your isolated person has to be able to connect with somebody. There's no reason for them to stick around otherwise. You could just float off into nothing and be your own solo, roguish, mysterious self if you're playing the brooding type. And then you're just done with the table. You have to bring a new character. That's not as much fun if you don't get to really establish stuff. So, being a team player, in that early mission, you have to find something that connects you to them. Additionally, you have to be flexible about what is going on at the table. You have to be willing to push the big red button, essentially, as it is. You have to be willing to make the dumb choices, go, yes, I'm going to do that. I know that it's stupid, but I don't really care. These people that I'm with want to do it. It is about the compromising of your hard and fast ideals of isolation and whatever. Like, you have to engage. You have to engage. You have to drop the facade a little bit here. We see it all the time. We see it in all kinds of media. All of the dad characters that we are so in love with, Joel from The Last of Us, Mando from The Mandalorian, people like that. Those individuals that are so isolated, so like brooding, and I know that I just named 2 Pedro Pascal characters. That's not what I'm going for there necessarily, but like they're both very shut down. They're both very to themselves, but they open up a little bit to that individual that is being brought to them. And you have to be willing to be open in that way, be a team player in that way. And we see it in them. They compromise a lot on the things that they want to do specifically for the betterment of the people around them. In those 2 particular cases, it's the 2 individuals that they are trying to take care of. But in general, you have to be willing to be that team player, to say, okay, sure, fine, let's do it your way. That has to be something that you are okay with doing. If you think, well, that's not something my character would do, you're still early enough in the campaign to tweak that a little bit. You can make it something your character would do. I like to play high charisma, low wisdom characters because it feels like they lack the common sense to look at something and go, that's a really bad choice. But they can talk and talk and talk and be exuberant all day long. You don't have to have the high charisma for that. There needs to be something in there that will keep the ball rolling, ultimately. If you want to be the person that puts a stop to it, you need to then offer the solution for what is going on. And then when that goes wrong, you have to be able to accept that there's going to be some kind of backlash from the other players at the table. And by other players, I mean the characters that the players are playing. If your character shuts down a plan and then you suggest a different plan and something goes terribly wrong with it, you have to be able to be like, yep, I made a bad call there. Sorry about that. I'll make it up to you guys next time because I'm sticking with you because I have fallen deeply in love with you because you're my favorite people ever. You're the only people that have ever shown me any interpersonal affection, which is probably just what your character needs. Third, final, This is more for the players than the characters necessarily, but it does go both ways. Be vulnerable. The third thing here is be vulnerable. I know that's super difficult at a new table. It's super hard to do if you are somebody who is more reserved yourself, if you are somebody who's not super comfortable with getting deep into role play, that kind of thing. But you, in sitting down at a table, need to understand that there is an expectation that you are going to be, to a degree, in character. That doesn't mean doing silly voices and being like physically in character, but you need to be thinking in character. You need to be engaging in character in a way. And so there is the assumption that you are going to show up to the table being open, being welcome, being vulnerable, and everybody else around the table is going to be doing the same thing. Nobody is sitting there judging you for what you're doing. You are there to play a game with some people that you are either friends with, that you just met, that you know in passing, that you have heard about at some point on the internet or on Facebook or some. Facebook's on the internet. You know them in some capacity. And so showing up that way is, you have to be able to be ready to sort of open yourself up to that possibility. And that's cool. And the same thing kind of goes with the characters. You early on need that vulnerability in your character in order to build those relationships. We are 12 sessions in my game. I'm a sorcerer. I have super high charisma. I was charismatic. I was confident, and all of that stuff all through the beginning of the game. And then we hit our first fight, and my little dude broke down in like tears, freaking out about everything, because he had never been in that kind of a situation before. That is his vulnerability. He did not understand the situation that he was getting himself into, and he freaked out. He panicked quite a bit, and his team pulled him out of it. That is what it needs to. That's what it needs to be. There needs to be that implied structure of support there that binds you all together. If everybody is being vulnerable, if everybody is sharing secrets, if everybody is sharing backstories, you need to, or it establishes that dynamic really well early on. We have a character in our party who is a Circle of Spores druid. I don't know exactly what their deal is because the DM's doing a slow burn. It's really cool, but they have to release some decay every single day. And my character noticed that was a thing. We talked about it a little bit, and I got them some gloves because the tips of the fingers had gone black, and they kept like rubbing at them and didn't like it. It's little stuff like that. It is allowing yourself to be a vulnerable part of the party, in both the big moments and the small moments. It is looking around the table, seeing what the other players need from you in that moment, and giving it to them in character. It's really, really important to be able to like put yourself in that situation and trust the people around the table in order to actually like give the table what it needs. And so being vulnerable is that third one. Obviously, highly recommend all of those safety tools that I've talked about a few different times: consent checklists, session zero, etc., ahead of getting into that sort of situation, because you don't exactly know what everybody's about around the table until you have sat down and had that actual conversation. But it's important to like keep that in mind as you go forward, and when everybody is on the same page, when everybody agrees, then you are good to go and you are ready to have a really, honestly, very good and fulfilling time playing this game. So those are my three big things for building that early party dynamic, early party relationships. They are being open when you meet, actively wanting to engage with the people around you, being a team player instead of just sort of a bunch of loners who don't really trust anybody and don't take anything from anybody, and they're self-sufficient and they don't need anybody. Be a team player. And third, be vulnerable, both in character and out. And DMs, you can help facilitate all of these things. If there is something that it seems like you're kind of running into a problem with here, talking above the table is never a bad thing, just to try and like parse out where people are in terms of mentality with their character, with themselves, just to make sure that like everybody's got it buttoned up, everybody knows where they're at, and there is still the understanding that you are going forward playing this game, having a good time together. Because emotions can get high early on, late game, mid game, like all over the place in the game. And it's important sometimes to just like take a sec, communicate with each other, and then get back down into the game. Just be aware of the people at the table. Make sure everybody's having a good time. and have fun playing the game, because that's what it is ultimately. So that is everything I have on that one. Heading on over to the shows we have today and tomorrow. It's Monday, which means we have a long list here. First up, we have The Paper Dungeon, Chromatic Dice, Beyond the Realms, Unprepared Casters, Greetings Adventurers, Bards of New York, Hapless Heroes, Island Adventures, Cast Party, Three Black Halflings, Hello from the Magic Tavern, King Leo D&D, Anti-Heroes Anonymous, Tabletop Tavern, Top of the Round, and League of Lady Adventurers. And then tomorrow, we have Diary of a Dragon Pit, Star Wars First Resistance, Dungeons and Daddies, Bombarded, Heck of a D&D, Glass Cannon, and the Queer Questers. Check them out. Let them know that I sent you, because again, someday somebody's going to say something to me about it, and I'm going to think that it's very funny. But until then, I'm just going to keep asking you guys to do it. That is everything I have to talk to you guys about today. So, thank you so very much for making me part of your morning routine. I really do appreciate it. And thank you so much in particular to my patrons. You guys are the ones that make this show possible. If you're interested in becoming a patron, check out the link in the episode description. And that's all of it. So, with all that said, guys, don't forget, drink tea, play D&D, and keep on rolling.